Hello and welcome to the chart of the month from Silicon Valley Mobility for January 2020. Well, here we are in the year 2020, a new decade, a new age of mobility, so we were promised. But what does it mean? What actually happened to all these forecasts? For instance, where are the flying cars that were featured just like this in the movie Back to the Future? They should have been in the air already for more than 5 years now. Or what happened to the self-driving car that Waymo, for instance, has been working on for over 10 years now. Outside my office here in Palo Alto, I see some of them still for testing every day. But can I use them to get to the San Francisco airport later this afternoon? Not today. So what's up with all these forecasts? How do we actually get from a certain point in time into the future and can make predictions, such as from 2010 to 2020. What happened in this time with all these forecasts? I want to discuss this a little bit more, and I don't want to be bashing everybody else's work. I really want to talk about my own work and a few forecasts and projections that I made 10 years ago and since then. So let's start with 2009, actually, more than 10 years ago, when I said in a list of different projections that by 2018, the American love affair with the car will become strictly platonic and the car will just be one big gizmo, or that by 2020, there will be 10% of all new vehicles battery electric. A little bit over-optimistic, actually factor of 5 overly optimistic. And for the platonic love affair, that's also not quite what we see at this point. Some other projections that I've done in 2010, for instance, that I came up with different categories: what is probable, what is possible, and what is maybe plausible that can happen. So in terms of very likely, likely, and somewhat likely. And I put in those, for instance, that by 2015, vehicle-to-vehicle communication for safety functions would be available, which did still not happen at that point and still not today. Or, for instance, that a possible scenario might be that in 2020, car-sharing membership increases to 3% of all people. Also, that was a little bit over-optimistic. So what about some further projections then? In 2014, for instance, I did quite a list of the history of driver assistance systems and what might happen in the future, and I aligned this with the SAE international levels of automation, and then said around the end of the 2010s we might see some automated highway cruising, automated parking and the likes, which basically is what we also saw in the previous years, and that around now that we would see a fully automated on-demand mobility system, a shuttle service that actually might be coming to the market now. And I also said that the fully automated personal vehicle is a vision of the future. A little bit later than in 2014, I put this a little bit more concretely into this roadmap, which was that in 2017, self-parking might be available, in 2020, automated highway cruising, which basically are functionalities what we got then in Tesla's autopilot, and just maybe mixed up. Automated highway cruising was first, and then the summon function came later on. 2015, I did something where I said, well, it's maybe not just one path towards the vision of automated driving. There's an evolutionary scenario, a revolutionary scenario, and there's maybe a transformative scenario. And I also pointed out, by the time we get to this great vision of automated driving, it might be something relatively different from what we expect. When I also said it's not so much about when things happen, but where they happen, but also it might, some of it closer than we think, but different than we expect. And then finally in 2017, I did a broader scenario of how automated driving can come to the San Francisco Bay Area, like an early phase with shuttle vehicles and platoons of trucks, a growth phase with automated highway infrastructure, things like that, delivery vehicles, and a mainstream phase where we basically get a broad deployment of all of those. But the great vision of unlimited automated driving, so level 5 automated driving, ways into the future. So why do I talk about all of this, and what's the point in this? And it's really, on the one hand, these forecasts that are to the point, how helpful really are those? But also, how do you do these forecasts, especially now that we're in a new decade and we've seen that quite some of them have not worked that well? Well, for one, don't call it forecast, call it a projection, because you can forecast the weather, but you project from now into the future how things might work. Well, we've seen that those milestones might not work that well because they are too specific. It's a single event that we are pointing to, and if one thing then doesn't work out, maybe everything else that I'm talking about is not that great. You can come up with broader scenarios, but they get pretty complex and they're difficult to act upon. So that an investor, for instance, says, I'm not investing in a whole scenario, I'm investing into one thing. So what I propose are classes, actually, of projections that provide more context, my own personal thinking, the context for this, and also a spectrum of likelihoods that things can happen. And the classes that I recommend are certain, probable, and possible. So what we saw in my 2010 work, what is really relatively likely, what is somewhat likely, and what is maybe more speculation. And those should be then categorized into one larger box of projections. For instance, that we say it's actually quite certain that shuttle vehicles will come to the market now within the next couple of years. And it's probable that we will see automated trucks on the highway within the next 5 years. But it's maybe just within the possibility that I will have a car that can drive me to San Francisco Airport this afternoon, maybe by the end of this decade. Well, we shall see, but definitely some food for thought. I'm looking forward to your reactions and your thoughts on this, and I will be back with more projections with different likelihoods throughout this year and certainly throughout this decade. Thanks for watching. I'll be in touch. Bye-bye.